They say that a man is innocent until he is proven guilty, but when you look at the criminal justice systems of the world and the various ways that convictions are done, is that really true? Over the last decade alone, there's been all sorts of stories about how people who were innocent were put in jail after getting due process. And one of those people was Steven Avery, a man who has now been sent to prison twice for murder, was proven innocent of one of them already, and many feel he's innocent of the other conviction as well. So allow us to ask, was Steven Avery wrongfully committed again? Number 9. The early days of Steven Avery. Before we dive into his potential innocence, we have to look at his life, his crimes, his convictions, and how it has all played out over the years. Steven Avery was born in 1962 in Manitowoc County, Wisconsin, to Alan and Dolores Avery. Avery has 3 siblings, Chuck, Earl, and Barb. He attended public schools in nearby Mishicot and Manitowoc, where his mother said he went to an elementary school for slower kids. According to one of his lawyers in 1985, school records show that his intelligence quotient was 70 and that he barely functioned in school. This would be very important for the prosecution in the cases to come. In 1982, Avery married Lori Matheson, who was a single mother. They have 4 children together, Rachel, Jenny, and twins Stephen and Will. After hearing of all this, you might think that there honestly wasn't much special about Steven Avery, and honestly, you'd be right about that. He was incredibly average, but being average doesn't mean you're evil or capable of heinous acts. However, certain things that happened in his early life would go and paint a picture for those who tried to convict him of murder later on. Number 8. Early troubles with the law. His bout with the law was going and robbing a store with a friend, and that got him 10 months in jail. Then, he apparently killed his cat alongside some friends, and that led him to going back to jail for animal cruelty. Fast forward to 1985, and his cousin was spreading very unflattering rumors about him, and he ran her off the road and pointed an unloaded gun at her to get her to stop doing that. He was sentenced for 6 years for that crime. He served all of that time and even said later on that he had had a lot of bad people around him influencing him to do these things, but that wasn't going to matter given what happened next. Number 7. The first erroneous arrest. In July of 1985, a woman named Penny Bernstein was assaulted and violated while on a jog one day. During a photo lineup, she said it was Avery who was the attacker. Keep that in mind as we go forward. Why? Because Avery was 40 miles away in Green Bay shortly after the attack, an alibi supported by a timestamped store receipt and 16 eyewitnesses. That proves he didn't do it by any stretch of the imagination. Yet despite that clear logic and proof, he was arrested and charged with the crime, getting 32 years in jail for it. He also appealed twice to get free, but was denied. In 1995, a detective made a call to the jail that Avery was at and noted that an inmate had admitted committing an assault years ago in Manitowoc County and that someone else was in jail for it. The sheriff at the jail didn't believe him, and thus Avery remained in jail. As for his release, that came in 2002 when the Innocent Project used DNA evidence to prove that Avery was innocent and that a man named Gregory Allen had done the deed. What's important to note here is that Allen and Avery honestly did look alike, a small comfort to a man wrongfully convicted of a crime he didn't commit and had to spend almost 2 decades in jail for it, wouldn't you say? Sadly for him, the hits, as it were going to keep on coming. Number 6. Teresa Halbach. Teresa Halbach was a photographer born in 1980. 25 years later, in early November, she went missing and her parents called in to the police to let them know that their daughter was missing. Halbach was known to have visited the Avery salvage yard in Manitowoc County on October 31, 2005, days before her death. On November 10, 2005, following the discovery of her Toyota RAV4 vehicle partially concealed on the Avery property, Calumet County Sheriff Jerry Pagel conducted a search and found the charred remains of Halbach. Her cell phone, license plates, and car key were also recovered. Fast forward a few days, and Steven Avery's blood was found in her vehicle. Avery was charged with the kidnapping and murder of Halbach, mutilation of a corpse, and illegal possession of a firearm. Number 5. The immediate controversy of the case. Almost from the get-go, there were issues with the case. not least of which was that some of the county sheriffs and law enforcement who were involved in proving Avery guilty of the previous crime were allowed to investigate the new case, despite there being a civil suit by Avery against them. And some of the key evidence was indeed found by them. But as Avery's lawyers noted multiple times, not only was there a conflict of interest, there was evidence that was clearly tampered with, including a vial of Avery's blood from his wrongful conviction that had been unsealed, and a puncture wound was in the top as if to draw blood from the vial. Another controversy that came about was that of his nephew, Brendan Ray Dassey, who confessed to helping Avery with the attack on Teresa. But later, he recanted as he said he was coerced by cops as they didn't let him have a lawyer present. The cops involved claimed they use a legal technique, but that's heavily debated. It's also important to note that Brendan Dassey was evaluated psychologically and was said to be highly susceptible to suggestion. So thus, being grilled endlessly by cops was more than enough to get him to confess. Number 4. The trial and verdict. On March 18, 2007, Avery was found guilty of first-degree murder and illegal possession of a firearm and was sentenced to life in prison, as well as not getting the possibility of parole. So you'd think that right then and there, this would be over and that nothing left was to be done, right? Wrong, because one show was about to change everything. Number 3. Making a Murderer. In January 2016, after Making a Murderer had been released on Netflix, People magazine reported not long after that one of the Avery trial jurors was the father of a Manitowoc County Sheriff's deputy, and another juror's wife was a clerk with Manitowoc County. That's a clear violation of jury code, as no one connected to this case through family or job should have been allowed into the jury, and yet multiple were. Juror Richard Mahler, who was excused from the trial after the jury had begun deliberations because of a family emergency, he later commented that early on, 7 of the jurors had voted not guilty. He was mystified that the jury eventually agreed on a guilty verdict. Mahler's account has been disputed by other jury members who claim that no early vote had taken place and that an informal vote was taken with only 3 jury members voting Avery not guilty. Another juror allegedly told the Making a Murderer filmmakers of feeling intimidated into returning a guilty verdict, fearing for personal safety. All of which goes and puts out a lot of questions of legitimacy and whether things are exactly as they appear. Number 2. The appeals. Stephen Avery has made numerous attempts to go and get his freedom back. Many of them were denied, including one in 2017, which cited that there was clear corruption and falsified evidence going on that led to Avery's conviction and that a new trial needed to be held. It was denied without even looking at the potential new evidence. His current lawyer continues to fight for him and is trying hard to get a new trial based on new evidence found, as well as the testimony of a man who claims to have seen a different nephew of Avery's at the crime scene trying to move a car that might have been Halbach's. He went to the police about it but was dismissed because they had their man. As of now, Avery is still fighting and is even going to the Wisconsin Supreme Court to try and get his case looked at and verdict overturned. Number 1. Was he falsely imprisoned again? So let's ask the question, is Stephen Avery innocent? There's no easy answer either way. There was clearly some shady things going on in the investigation on both the officer and prosecution side, and that was proven via what happened with Dassey. In regards to Avery, there was clear bias on the cops' part and the court's part, and given that he is fighting so hard right now to get out of prison, doesn't make sense if he's guilty, right? We may never know the truth, but Avery and his team are absolutely going to keep fighting for it. So what do you think? What do you think of this look at the life of Stephen Avery and the question of whether he was indeed wrongfully imprisoned for a crime that he did not commit? Do you think he's indeed innocent and that the law is just trying to keep him locked up? Do you think enough evidence and testimony will come out that will allow him to get free? And once free, what do you think Avery would do next? Let us know in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe, and we'll see you next time on the channel.